I never paid much attention to my neighbors. I lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood where everyone minded their own business. But the man who moved into the house next door changed everything. At first, I barely noticed him. He never introduced himself, never waved when I passed by. His house was always dark, the curtains always drawn. At night, I would sometimes hear strange noises, scraping sounds like furniture being dragged and low murmurs, as if he was talking to someone. But I never saw anyone visit. One night, as I was taking out the trash, I saw him standing in his yard. He was tall and thin, his skin almost sickly pale. He was staring at me, unblinking. I forced a polite nod and hurried back inside, locking the door behind me. That's when the nightmares started. Dreams of being watched, of whispers creeping through my walls. And then the knocking began. It started softly in the middle of the night. A gentle tap 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 on my bedroom wall, the one that faced his house. I told myself it was just the old pipes. But one night, the knocks grew louder, more insistent. I pressed my ear to the wall, and I swear I heard breathing on the other side. I couldn't take it anymore. The next day, I decided to confront him. I walked up to his door and knocked. No answer. But as I turned to leave, the door creaked open. The house smelled of damp wood and something metallic, something like blood. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with silence. The walls were covered in deep scratches, as if someone or something had clawed at them. Then I saw it. A mirror at the end of the hallway, reflecting something behind me. A figure. I spun around, but the hall was empty. My heart pounded as I ran out of the house, slamming the door behind me. That night, the knocking came again. Louder, more desperate, and then a voice. Let me in. I never slept in that house again. I packed a bag and left that night, checking into a cheap motel across town. I told myself I was overreacting, that exhaustion and paranoia had twisted my mind. But deep down, I knew I wasn't safe. Not as long as that man, or whatever he was, lived next door. The next morning, I went back to my house in broad daylight. The sun made everything seem normal, almost safe. Almost. I told myself I'd just grab a few essentials and look for a new place. I'd call a realtor, maybe even report the neighbor to the police. But as I walked up to my front door, I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. The door was open. Not just unlocked, wide open, as if someone had been waiting for me. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But against my better judgment, I stepped inside. The air was stale, and the house was eerily silent. I moved cautiously toward my bedroom, my pulse pounding in my ears. Everything looked the same, except for one thing. The wall, the one I had heard the knocking from, was different. The paint was peeling away, revealing something underneath. Something that looked like a door, a hidden door. I had lived in that house for years, and had never known it was there. My hands trembled as I reached for the edge of the peeling wallpaper and pulled. The paper tore away easily, revealing an old wooden door with deep claw marks running down its surface. I stepped back, suddenly unsure if I wanted to know what was on the other side. Then, as if answering my hesitation, the doorknob turned. I stumbled backward, my breath catching in my throat. The door creaked open just an inch, just enough for me to see the eye staring back at me. It wasn't human. It was too large, too black, and it didn't blink. It just watched. A low, raspy whisper came from behind the door. You shouldn't have left. I ran. I don't even remember how I got to my car, how I started the engine, or how I ended up on the other side of town. I just knew I could never go back. The next day, I called the police. They checked the house, but they found nothing. No hidden door, no claw marks, nothing. And my neighbor? They told me the house next door had been vacant for years. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know that whatever was in that house is still waiting for me to come back. I didn't sleep for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that thing staring at me from behind the hidden door. The whisper still echoed in my mind. You shouldn't have left. I avoided my old neighborhood completely, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The police had found nothing, but I knew that door had been real. That thing, whatever it was real. I started doing research, digging through old property records and news archives. That's when I found something that made my stomach turn. Years ago, my neighbor's house had belonged to a man named Samuel Grayson. He was a recluse, much like the neighbor I had seen. But then I found a police report. Samuel Grayson had gone missing 10 years ago. His house had been abandoned ever since. But that wasn't the worst part. Further back, decades before Grayson had lived there, the house had belonged to a man named Walter Finch. And before him, someone else. And before them, another. Every owner of that house had either vanished without a trace or gone mad. One article mentioned an old superstition that the house was a gate, a place where the walls between worlds were thin. People who lived there heard knocking at night, whispers through the walls, and if they stayed too long, they disappeared. I slammed my laptop shut, my hands shaking, and then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello? Silence. Then a familiar, rasping whisper. You shouldn't have left. The line went dead. My blood turned to ice. I wasn't at that house anymore. I wasn't even near it. But whatever was inside it had followed me. I dropped my phone like it had burned me. My breath came in short gasps, and my hands trembled as I stared at the screen. The call log confirmed it. The number was untraceable. I wasn't safe. Not here. Not anywhere. I barely slept that night. Every shadow in the motel room felt too dark, too deep. Every creak of the old building made my skin crawl. I thought I heard breathing outside my door, but when I worked up the courage to look through the peephole, there was nothing there. The next morning, I made a decision. I needed to go back. Not to stay, not to live there, but to end this. I didn't know what I was dealing with, but if it had followed me once, it would follow me again. And I couldn't live like this, looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. I drove back to the house at noon, sunlight blazing down on the empty street. Everything looked so normal, so painfully ordinary. But I knew better. My house was just as I had left it, but my neighbor's house. The door was wide open. A shiver ran through me. The last time I had seen that door open, I had run for my life. But now I stepped closer, my pulse pounding. I peered inside. The house smelled of damp wood and something else, something rotting. The walls were still scratched, the air heavy with silence. But the worst part? The hidden door at the end of the hallway was fully open. And there were footprints leading out of it, not human ones. The prints were too long, too thin, with claw-like indentations in the wood. They led down the hall, out the front door, and onto my porch. I followed them with growing horror, my stomach twisting into knots. The trail stopped right at my front door, the one I had locked before leaving. The lock was broken, the door slightly ajar. Whatever had been behind that hidden door had been in my house. I stepped inside, heart hammering. Everything looked untouched, except for my bedroom door. It was open, wide open, and inside, on the wall, carved deep into the wood, were 4 words. You shouldn't have left. I staggered back, ball rising in my throat. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. That's when I heard it. Knocking. Soft at first. Tap, tap, tap. Then louder. More frantic, but not from the walls this time. From inside the closet. And then a whisper, rasping, hungry, and far too close. You're home. The door burst open, and the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. My breath hitched as I stumbled backward, my hands fumbling for the light switch. Click, click, click. Nothing. The knocking had stopped. But something else had taken its place. Breathing. Slow, deliberate, just beyond the closet door. I forced myself to move, to run, but as I turned, the air around me shifted, like something was moving in the dark, circling me. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I could feel it, even though I couldn't see it. Then the whisper came again, right beside my ear. You let me out. Cold fingers brushed my arm. I screamed and bolted for the door, slamming into the hallway wall as I ran. Behind me, the darkness in my bedroom seemed to stretch, swell, as if something was pouring out of it. I didn't look back. I sprinted out of the house, down the street, my mind a blur of terror. I barely registered my feet hitting the pavement until I reached my car. The second I got inside, I locked the doors and tried to catch my breath. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely grip the steering wheel. Then in the rearview mirror, I saw it. A figure, sitting in my back seat. My stomach dropped. My entire body went rigid with fear. The figure was tall, impossibly thin, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I couldn't see its face, but I felt it looking at me. I didn't think. I just threw the car into drive and sped away. Tires screeched as I tore down the road, my pulse hammering in my ears. I expected it to lunge at me, to grab me, to do something, but when I dared to glance in the mirror again, the back seat was empty. I gasped for air, trying to convince myself I had imagined it, that it wasn't real, that I was losing my mind. But then my phone rang. Unknown number. My blood turned to ice. I didn't want to answer. I shouldn't have answered, but my hands moved on their own, trembling as I brought the phone to my ear. I didn't say a word. Neither did the thing on the other end. At first, there was only silence. Then breathing. Slow. Heavy. Right in my ear. And then in that same rasping whisper, so close it felt like it was inside my own head. "You can't run." The call cut out. I slammed on the brakes, chest heaving, hands clenched so tightly around the wheel that my knuckles turned white. My mind raced. What the hell was I supposed to do? I couldn't go back. I couldn't go forward. Because no matter where I went, no matter how far I ran, it was coming with me. I don't remember driving to the motel. One moment, I was frozen in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. The next, I was standing in front of my motel room door, my key trembling in my hand. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me, the handle, the deadbolt, the chain. It didn't feel like enough. Nothing did. I sat on the bed, staring at my phone. My call log still showed unknown number. My mind kept replaying the voice. "You can't run." I wanted to believe I was imagining things, that I was exhausted, paranoid. But deep down I knew. It was real, and it wasn't done with me. 3:12 a.m. I woke to the sound of my motel door unlocking. The deadbolt clicked. The chain rattled. I shot up, heart hammering. The room was pitch black, but I could hear it. Something breathing just beyond the door. Slow, deep, patient. The handle turned. I scrambled backward, my body shaking. The door shouldn't open, not with the chain still latched. But then, with a soft, wet snap, the chain broke apart, links clattering to the floor. The door creaked open. A sliver of darkness spilled into the room, deeper than the night itself. And then footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Something was inside. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The mattress dipped as it sat on the bed beside me. I could feel the weight shift. The air grew colder, pressing against my skin. Then in that familiar, rasping whisper, right next to my ear, "You brought me with you." I screamed. 7:45 a.m. The motel manager found me in the parking lot, sitting barefoot on the asphalt, shaking. I didn't remember running out of the room, didn't remember getting outside. But there I was, covered in sweat, my throat raw from screaming. The manager kept asking if I was okay, if I needed help. I just nodded, grabbed my keys, and got in my car. I didn't check out. I didn't look back. I just drove. But no matter how far I go, I feel it, watching, waiting. And at night, when the world is quiet, I still hear the knocking. I don't know how long I've been driving. The highways blur together, nameless towns passing like shadows in my rearview mirror. I don't stop for long, just enough to refuel, to eat when I can stomach it. But no matter where I go, no matter how many miles I put between myself and that house, it always finds me. The knocking never stops. Some nights, it's soft, tap, tap, tap against the motel walls, the car window, the inside of the closet door. Other nights, it's louder, desperate, right beside me. And the whispers. God, the whispers. I stopped answering my phone, but it doesn't matter. It speaks to me through radios, through televisions full of static, through the hum of the engine when I drive too long without rest. You can't run. You let me out. You are mine now. Last night, I caught my reflection in the mirror of a gas station bathroom. My face looked thinner, my eyes sunken. But the worst part? The thing standing behind me. It wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't supposed to smile. I shattered the mirror and ran, but I know it doesn't matter. I can feel it now, inside me, like a second heartbeat. Waiting. I don't know when it will happen, but I know the truth now. This isn't about a house, or a neighbor, or something hiding behind a hidden door. This is about me. I was never meant to leave. And soon, I won't.